All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure a few more will be coming in. As there you go, right there. I'm Chris Hudson. I'm the committee liaison for the Committee on Design for and work with the Honor Awards juries every year with AI Minnesota. I've got co-chair Committee on Design co-chair Mary Springer here with me as well, and she may be able to answer some questions later on as well, in addition to our presenters. Thank you for joining us. This is something new every year where we have some folks who won last year open up their booklets, their entries, and kind of share their approach to how they told the story of their projects. I'm going to be interrupted here quite a bit. That's okay. Great. So I've introduced myself and Mary. We're going to have presentations as the first part of the program. I'll introduce our presenters in just a moment. I also want to do a screen share myself. Look at our Honor Awards page. I'm sure you've all visited the Honor Awards page. Let me move my thing around here. Where we have all of the details of the program, including our over the last 5 or 6 years, our integration with the AI framework for design excellence. The framework measures some information on how you should approach your entries with regard to the framework for design excellence. The Common App requirement, there's some additional links here that can help with the Common App upload that you'll need to do for each of your entries. Information on this is the Honor Awards video from last year, but we'll update it with this one very shortly. We've got the jurors listed for this year. Brandon Dake, Katie Faulkner, and Helen Pierce. They're jurors from around the country whose firms have done some nationally award-winning work of late. And of course, the eligibility requirements, process information, submission information. We try to look at this every year and make sure we're updating everything. So if you all go to this page and something isn't clear or seems outdated, I'm the one to get in touch with. My email is you can find a link to my email page as well. So I just wanted to direct you all to that before we get started. The Honor Awards system, the awards portal is open now. So you can get in and start an entry. That's how it's once you start an entry that you'll be guided to a link that will allow you to download an unlocked version of the 2025 version 1 Common App that you'll fill out and then re-upload with your projects, in addition to everything else. There's a couple new things this year that I'll share here that we've shared in the Matrix announcement in the August Matrix last week, and some things that are staying the same. New this year, we are going back to Honor Awards only, no commendations. When we originally moved to the framework for design excellence, we had it that projects that were deemed to have achieved excellence in at least 2 of the framework for design excellence measures were eligible for an honor award. And one particular achievement in a single measure could receive a commendation. Despite our best instructions and encouragement, haven't used those awards in quite that way related to the framework for design excellence. And so we're returning this year to honor awards only. The other thing we're doing is returning, I guess I'd call it an emphasis on the 5 project type categories we had pre-2018, which are architecture, interiors, renovation and restoration, master planning and urban design, and small projects. And entrants can self-select the category they want to be awarded in. We're going to encourage the jurors to try to award in as many, if not all, of the project categories as they can, but they won't be required. They will be allowed to choose the projects that they think have achieved the most excellence for honor awards. So those are the 2 new things. One of them is just semi-new. We're actually going back to the emphasis on categories. What's staying the same is that the entries should all address at least two of the framework measures, preferably explicitly in their award submissions, with the knowledge that the jurors are looking to make these awards in particular framework measures. And then last, we're continuing on with the Common App as our, the national AI national award programs and most of the components around the country for their design awards. When we get to the Q&A at the end, we'll have you put your questions in the chat. You can also put them in during the presentations if you like, and you can direct them to me if it's something operational or eligibility or something along those lines. But I think you're going to have most of your questions for the two presenters, and how they approach the storytelling and the visual and narrative storytelling in their entries. So we've got Nat Madsen of HGA. He was a lead designer, design principal. You're going to have to correct me, Nat, on the on Mills Hall and the Gibbons Center at Bowdoin College out in not New Brunswick, Brunswick, Maine. Sorry, that won an honor award last year. And then we'll have Jennifer Yost of VJA and the University of Minnesota School of Architecture share VJA's entry for 825 Arts in St. Paul, which also won an honor award. So thank you both for being here so much. And first we'll go to Nat. Take it away, Nat.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chris. My big fear is that I'm going to have an unstable internet connection. Can you hear me okay? Everything okay? I'm going to turn my video off once I start sharing. But thanks for allowing me to present this project. It's really exciting. And it's actually kind of an interesting exercise to revisit a submission from a year ago and look at, kind of, all right, what were the decisions made? What were the right decisions? What wasn't? And we were talking about this earlier. Chris, you had said our project was a slam dunk for an award, which was great because we also submitted in 2023 the same project and didn't win anything. And so I might, if I have a little time, I might share sort of what we changed between the 23 submission and the 24 submission. But I think I'll just jump into it. Let me share my screen. And can everyone see this PDF? Okay. I'm struggling here. Hang on a second. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so one of the challenges with this project, which is Mills Hall and Gibbons Center for Arctic Studies, was that it's a fantastic building. It's fascinating. There are all kinds of stories, but it's also a kind of complicated building to even present in a really straightforward way. It's two separate buildings that are connected underground and share some systems. There are two separate programs that are commensurate with each other, but different. And the buildings are a single project that work in tandem with each other. Even the name is kind of confusing, Mills Hall and the Gibbons Center for Arctic Studies. The Gibbons Center for Arctic Studies houses the Perry McMillan Arctic Museum, also confusing. So lots to deal with. How do you kind of present two buildings in a way that's clear and cohesive? And even things like the first image. So as I understand, we have, if we're going with a 11 by 17 spread for your submission, for your PDF submission, that gives you 12 spreads plus a title page. And the title page always has these requirements for super large text. So you get this kind of little image, at least as I interpret the rules. And what do you pick? And so in this case, we just decided not to show any image of trying to show two buildings, but rather something that was just evocative, something that came from the collection of the Center for Arctic Studies, and really kind of left it there. We tried to sort of approach the project, in a, I guess, logical way from a kind of high level context first, And so the first page is basically a few paragraphs about the project. And I guess you kind of got to assume these paragraphs are barely going to be read. If you read them, you'll know a bit about the project, but hopefully the takeaway from a page like this is you see a campus, college campus. You see our project in black. We're looking at this kind of campus plan on the left. And you see the two buildings, each with its own name. And then on the right is an aerial photograph of the campus. And maybe you'll recognize our two buildings in the photograph, maybe not at this point. But that's kind of the introduction. We photographed this building in July of 2023, right after, pretty shortly after it was completed, and move-in was kind of underway. Our photographer, Michael Moran, had this, was using a drone, which a lot of photographers do, but he had this really sweet kind of telephoto lens that he was able to use on his drone. And I really loved the photos he was getting of the campus that looked like axonometric drawings, and particularly this shot, which is almost like an elevational axon taken from the main quad kind of across this axis towards our buildings and through the kind of steeples of this 1850 chapel that is the kind of center of Bowdoin's campus. And so hopefully that gives folks a bit of context, and including the kind of pine trees around the perimeter of the project. The next spread, we decided to just show a large single image of the building from the quad, or of the buildings from the quad in the evening, giving the jury, I guess, a kind of understanding of how these buildings sit in the landscape. There's a kind of undulating landscape. There are some campus walking paths. And the two buildings, of course, have different kind of form and materiality. One of them is dark. The other one is a kind of red brick. And so the next image, there's a lot here to kind of maybe try to explain. And in our first go round, we had more paragraphs and more kind of explanation about the logic behind the material choices. This time around, we just left it simple, and we showed 3 project reference images and then another exterior shot. And the exterior shot kind of gives you a little bit more context again. It's sort of giving up a little bit on the clarity of Mills Hall, the red brick building, but allowing people to kind of see the foreground of pine trees, which is a really kind of strong, they have a really strong presence on the site. And the Bowdoin and its pines has this kind of legacy to it that dates back to the late 18th century. And so we kind of helped use that argument about the pines, let's say, or that story about the pines to build an argument for a timber building, which is one of the defining qualities of this project, which a jury won't know yet because we haven't gotten there. But what we do see is a glass lantern slide from the collection of the Perry McMillan Arctic Museum. And they have this really incredible collection of slides of photos from Arctic expeditions in the 19th century. And the atmosphere is always really blown out with snow and sky. And any figure that ends up in the frame becomes this kind of silhouette. And that was our kind of basis of design for thinking of the Center for Arctic Studies as this kind of dark silhouette that was set apart from the rest of the campus. From there, you see another typical campus red brick building, and then a postcard of the Bowdoin Pines, which is kind of the context of the project. Whether anyone's actually reading that or looking into it, I don't know. Another exterior shot. At this point, I think this is our 4th spread. We're showing a site plan. There's kind of this question of like, how many plans, how many drawings and diagrams do you show? In this case, we did feel it was important to show a site plan, which kind of sites the buildings and the landscape, and then allows for us to show a view of the two buildings from the north, from the parking lot. And then one of the kind of distinctive characteristics of moving in between the buildings is the sort of tension in between the two entrances, which are fronting each other. And that's really difficult to capture in a photograph. And so we had to sort of pair these two images of these monumental sapelli-clad door entrances and sort of pair them with this view from the parking lot. Again, just trying to give the jury an understanding of the relationship between these two buildings and this sense of arrival. At this point, okay, so now we can get into the buildings. And so it's time to show a plan. And I would love to say that these plans were straight out of Revit, but they weren't. This kind of thing, I'll show you our previous version, but we rework them in Illustrator and try to make them clear and legible, as clear and legible as possible. So in this case, we're looking at the first floor of the two buildings and trying to pair an image that a jury member could kind of place themselves on the plan. So in this case, Mills has this kind of chevron-shaped form, the red brick building, and we are in this wedge-like lobby condition with the timber stair. And it has a real vaulted kind of vertical quality to it. And so hopefully anyone viewing the plan can kind of see where they are. But in making this decision, we didn't show the Center for Arctic Studies lobby or any sort of view from inside the Center for Arctic Studies. And so it's that kind of simplifying that we did this time around in the presentation. So last time, the 2023 submission, we tried to show a view from each floor with each plan, and it got to be a little bit muddled, the kind of clarity. So now we'll go up to the second floor. Each of the two buildings has a kind of distinctive hall-like space. So at Mills Hall, we have an event space. You see that on the top. And in the Center for Arctic Studies, there's a gallery, which is this kind of vaulted space. And so in this case, we did show an image of each of those conditions. Here, the second floor, on the bottom right, we're seeing the second floor gallery space at the Peary-McMillan Arctic Museum in the Center for Arctic Studies. And you can kind of maybe see that there's a balcony overlooking another space, and you'll see that in a minute. And then on the top, we have a view from the event space at Mills Hall. One of the real challenges about photography, and something that was worked out in advance for us, much to our benefit, was trying to populate these images with people. And so for this project, we had a good relationship with the marketing coordinator for Bowdoin College, and they made sure that we had access to the building and all of the spaces, and also that there would be students on campus that we could use in our photos. And they were sort of paid with like some prepaid gift cards if they stuck around for long enough. And it was really helpful to have the photographs populated with students. And in the case of the event space here on the top, there was actually a kind of like an event occurring that we were able to photograph while we were there. And so we were able to get a shot of this space full of people, or mostly full of people, instead of a kind of empty space with some chairs sitting around, which is always a challenge. It's difficult to coordinate those things when shooting the project. So the next spread shows a couple of sections. The upper section, the upper left, shows the Center for Arctic Studies. And you can kind of see, you can kind of see this double height gallery condition. So the third floor and part of the second floor are the Arctic Museum. And the rest of the floor are sort of research spaces, teaching classrooms and offices for the Center for Arctic Studies. And then the bottom section shows the kind of relationship between the two lobby entrances. And then this is an opportunity to show a photograph from that upper gallery. And again, there's a timber structure. At the Center for Arctic Studies, there's a ridge beam. At Mills, there are these kind of delicate 60-foot span trusses for the event space. So there's a kind of difference structurally. But this was really an opportunity in these three spreads to show the plans and the sections and some corresponding spaces. Trying to keep it simple, minimizing the amount of text and paragraphs and such. This spread is showing, I guess, the diversity of classroom spaces at Mills. And so there are a number of classrooms and faculty offices and even a cinema space. And so this was an opportunity to sort of put together a spread that just showed those relationships and the relationship between the timber structure and the space itself. Again, really helpful to have these students who actually look like students in the images. This spread was an opportunity to talk or to sort of show the structural idea. And really with all of these images, it's important, or it was important to us to try to create sort of relationships between the images and the drawings. So in this case, we're looking at the Center for Arctic Studies towards this kind of glass lantern window that overlooks the quad and the campus. And then we see a view from inside that window back towards the chapel, which we saw earlier. Adjacent to that, we see the frame, the sort of timber frame of the Mills event space. And above that is a structural framing model that we did during the design process. And hopefully the jury can kind of work their way around these images and understand sort of where they are, orienting themselves between these two buildings within this sequence of images. The next shot is back to the exterior, just a single shot kind of looking through the buildings. One of the defining characteristics of the buildings is that they have these angular kind of sharp gabled roofs. There's a kind of play with perspective that occurs, and this shot really kind of shows that relationship between Mills and the Center for Arctic Study. And let's see here. Back inside, there are a lot of kind of vaulted spaces in these buildings. So these are both shots from within Mills, again, showing that lobby that we've already seen with the stair. A kind of entry condition. You see a student outside, you see a kind of breakout collaborative learning space adjacent to the lobby. And then just these kind of corridor conditions with polished concrete, timber, and white gyp walls. It's really kind of minimal palette for the project, but trying to capture the kind of volume of these spaces and the kind of presence of the timber frame. And then this is, I think, the 12th spread. And we're back to an exterior view, but this time we have a kind of comprehensive diagram that shows the two buildings in a kind of massing way, the relationship between them. But it's kind of an opportunity to provide more information about the design excellence categories. I think we've got maybe 8 of them listed on here. And really kind of a brief paragraph about each one, and the jury can read them or skip over them. But this kind of comprehensive diagram, I think, was probably pretty helpful in allowing this project to be understood by the jury. And this was a diagram that we didn't have the first time we submitted. And I have a feeling that this was maybe helped. And I guess one question is, should an image like this or a diagram like this go at the beginning of the document, or is it better served at the end as a kind of summary? In this case, we treated it like a summary page for the project. And that's it. So that was Mills Hall and the Gibbons Center for Arctic Studies. I want to just quick show, I don't know if I've got a couple minutes here. I want to quick show what we presented in 2023. A lot of this is the same. The photography was the same. Some interesting differences though. I thought the story about the context of the campus was really important. There were all these buildings that had some kind of influence on the design. And so we show a campus plan and list all these buildings. But as I was looking at this later, it's like, nobody knows what these are, and there's no more information about why that's important. So the updated version of this is just much more simple, just shows the buildings and the 2 campus quads. And I think that's probably the better choice. Another one, like for instance, the site plan, we included a paragraph that described the site plan context and concept, and probably not read by anybody, just took it out for the more recent submission. And then also in our plans, I'll just make this large again, we're showing more photographs, but we were doing these plans that were calling out shear walls in CLT, which I guess is interesting, but they're distracting and probably reduces the legibility and kind of immediate reading of the plans. And so we ended up just cutting that out as well. So I would say the kind of lesson learned from the 23 submission to now was simplify. Try to make the big ideas clear, but also try not to sort of over describe some of the nuanced ideas. And I think I'm gonna stop there. I'll turn my video back on if it starts. I don't know if we're gonna do questions or should we go on to Jennifer and maybe do questions at the end?
Yeah, I think we'll wait for questions at the end. Thank you, Nat. That was really fascinating to see those two versions, some changes that happened. And what you guessed, I mean, I don't remember the specific discussion of these two entries in the juries, but simplifying is a really good idea. And there are things that I've heard a lot of architects who've resubmitted in one say that they thought there were really important things, details that they wanted to get into a submission that just weren't necessary. And once they came out, the jury had a clearer route through the project and the storytelling. So thank you for that. I've got to find you, Nat, to unpin. Oh, there we go. Thank you again. And let's hand things over to Jennifer. Oh, I think you might be on mute, Jennifer.
I'm on mute. Thanks for that. Yeah, and I'll share and I'll walk through it like Nat did. A lot of the same kind of issues. So it'll be interesting seeing them side by side. Full screen, hopefully it still shows. Okay, can you see that? Yes. So the project that I am showing is one of our absolute favorites that I think it was a 7-year process. And when we started working with the client, an important part of this project, and I think the submittal is really that challenge, is this is really a community-led project. And so the community is a big part of the story. And I think so is the existing building and the history of the building. And the history of the building and the community and why the community cared so much about this building and using it for this purpose. And kind of early on, we had these amazing kind of sessions with the community that was like full of performance and everybody brought food. And it's like that kind of stuff you can't really put in a photo, but it's an important part of the story. And so I think the question is, how do you tell the story? You know, this our first page, we had the same challenge that Nat did, and quite often we sometimes will show a detail on the first page or something more conceptual, and we just use the sign. A25 Arts is something that they went through a renaming and a rebranding just before we kind of before they kind of opened the project. And it had been called Victoria Theater for decades. And so this was a meaningful thing for them not to be Victoria Theater because they didn't align themselves with Queen Victoria. And it was a strange, like, oh, this is our street. And so there was a rethinking that we thought was important, even though nobody really knew it.
Jennifer, real quick, I think we're seeing tiles of all of the slides or all of the spreads instead of one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Let me see. How do I do this? Let me try a different way. On my screen, it shows, let's see. When I go to full screen, it shows the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe try unscreen sharing, unshare, and then when you go back, maybe there's a different option. Sometimes I get the whole. I can choose between.
It's like when it's going into full bleed, it's kind of disappearing and not giving you what I'm seeing. Wait, let me see. Let me try. Open to suggestions. Let's see.
Do we have any Zoom experts or?
Maybe I can not go to full screen, but let's see if I can, no. Talk amongst yourselves. Sorry. Sorry about this.
And if I'm going to go grab my copy of it from last year too, in case that helps, and I can just share one, you can direct me.
Okay. Can you see that? Or well, no, you can't see that because I'm not sharing. If I show this, you'll see the pages side by side, but I won't be full screen mode. Does that work?
Okay.
Or
Let's
would it be
see.
better, you could use yours, Chris, if that would be better, but,
Oh, I think this is working just fine. We can
Okay,
see at
okay.
least a spread at a time. Yeah.
okay. So the first spread is, I think we always struggle with how do you get the spirit of the project, or like what is the project out first. And so this is a combination of photographs that we took at the opening. So one of us took the one on the left, and you know, a lot of the history of the building, and the building received historic status not for its architecture. It was designed by Franklin Ellerby as a silent movie theater, and it didn't last for that as that purpose for very long. It became a speakeasy and jazz club, and was used in a lot of different ways by the community over the years. But it was the beginning of it was an important song that is called the Moonshiners Dance was performed here. And it's an important folk song. And that's a long history, but it's kind of why this building is here and why it took on this kind of life of performance for the community. And so we wanted to show that, and we wanted to show people. So we did a lot of like, how do we show the life of the community? How do we show this history on the first page? Let me see if I can. Now it's gonna let me to go to the next one. So. And then this one really looks more at the context, and an important part of it is, you know, it's on the LRT system and the kind of fabric of the block and the neighborhood we thought was an important thing to show. It's a really unusual, long, skinny building with a storefront on the street. On the left are more of our photographs, or is one of our photographs from the opening right after the ribbon cutting, when everybody went into the building for the first time. So we hope that like a lot of the things that we felt were like meaningful were meaningful to other people. This is a shot taken by Corey Gaffer, and you know, this was largely, you know, people who were working on site and who were around, and it didn't have the same feel of a lot of people in it. So that's why we mixed together professional photographs by Corey with things that we had taken. And we had laid it out the first time with just professional photographs and felt like it felt really empty, and it didn't get the idea across. So next one. The whole building kind of works as a stage to the street, you know, where you feel the performance inside, and it's really flexibly used. And it's basically a really simple building with two big spaces, and an upper level mezzanine and green room and things like that, and community room. So it's not a complicated program. So there wasn't really, you know, a lot of different kinds of spaces to show. It was really a lot about this relationship between the street and the inside. And then one of the things that we did, it was a very low budget building, but we looked at covering the walls at one point, and we love the layers of stuff on the walls, and you know, the old murals, the remnants of the movie theater, things that people had posted, and we wanted to preserve that because we thought that was a part of all these stories this building had to tell. And so showing that was a challenge. Our floor plans are on the right. Our workflow is Rhino to Revit. And so in our early stages, we're more in Rhino until we start working with a bigger team and contractors and consultants. Then we move Rhino into Revit. But we often pull from Revit back out into Rhino and then into Illustrator to get kind of line works and things to work. But kind of getting at like what is a lot of the, you know, what is the spirit of it? Here, let me see if I can shift my screen over. So can you see this? Hold on. I think I'm not, I'm cutting it off on the left. So on the left hand, oh, maybe it isn't so bad. Okay. So on the left-hand side, this is that kind of major stair that becomes a balcony in the flex performance space. The upper community room that overlooks the street, and then we added some details of the stair railing. So sometimes we go back and forth between different scales of things and put put things together that shows use or shows a detail with an overall. So this really talks about kind of preservation process and what we added and what we didn't. This is a shot by Corey Gafford of the space. Again, no budget. So we basically used light and colored lights and things to kind of get at some more design detail. The photo on the left, what is amazing about this, and please go to 825 Arts. They have amazing performances. They're just a fantastic community asset, and they just have a range of things from classes to kids that are in the front area to different kinds of performances, and it's very spontaneous. Some of them, a lot of things are free to the community. But this is basically, they just wanted the opportunity to keep it as many possible configurations for stages as possible. And that sets up all these different performances on the left. So we showed like, here are the things that, and these are photographs created by our clients of like different things that happened the first few weeks. Cause we did this like pretty quickly after it had been completed. And then these were some of our planning drawings that we turned into graphics. The main space to the right is, you know, the performance space. Sorry, this is not the best. Wait, let me see if I could do another page, 2-page view. I can get it at least centered so that you guys can see what I'm trying to do at least.
Jennifer, I do have it pulled up. If you ever want me to, if you want to switch over, I can show a full screen of just just the PDF.
It's not. Why didn't you pull that up? Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I can't get it centered without doing full screen. Okay, so if
Yeah, go down to the.
Yeah, so that's
one?
yeah, that's the performance spaces, and then if you go to the next one, these are really, it's a short presentation, but this shows the layers of kind of the walls, the traces of what had been there before and the story that tells. So that kind of went with some of the text that we talked about. So a lot of this is like community, it's adaptive reuse and renovation. And then the next page. And then this looks at like what we found there. So this was kind of I talked about like this stuff I had on my phone, the first walkthrough of like this discovery of like, oh my gosh, look at this piece of wallpaper, look at this mural. All these funny patches and some of the, you know, it didn't have lighting and it had holes in the wall to the alley, and there's a lot of like cool stuff that we couldn't keep, but we wanted to show that kind of character of just leaving it as found. And then next. And then this was kind of like a summary. We always try to figure out like what is the thing that ends it and ties it all together. And then the last one is there one more image? Yeah, and so the last one is really more about the community. So we stopped on the building and the space, and then the image on the right is one somebody from our office took at the opening, and the one on the lower left is the one taken by our client. So I think what Nat was talking about is how do you include the people who use your building and kind of make it alive in the photographs. And a lot of photographers we work with don't really like to have people in the photographs because they feel like they have to sign waivers. And so some photographers really don't want to do that, or we'll bring people to the shoots, and so you'll see like half of our office in every photo shoot, which we also so yeah, the photography and balancing the photography and the drawings and, you know, how do you show what you want to show that best presents the building is such a big lift, but that's it.
Great presentation. Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you for your patience with not getting the
No,
other
that's my
PDF up.
fault. Zoom is really bad for PowerPoint full screen, but I don't. I frustrated by the PDF version too.
All right. You know, we sort of have I think a number that we can probably do raise hands and have this more conversational than everyone typing in the chat. If anyone has a question and they want to unmute and do a raise hand, we'll call on you. Question for either Nat, Jennifer, or both. See who's going to be the brave one. Well, maybe not. Oops, maybe Kevin. Yeah, Kevin, what question do you have?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for sharing the work and the everything that's kind of led to it with the award submittals. Really appreciate that. I think the one question I have, sometimes we often think about it as design excellence kind of standards and things like that of, oftentimes we try and think about it beforehand. Through the design process, awards come up, then we think about it again, and then it's almost like we're kind of re-looking at the project again through design excellence standards. And so I'm wondering if you might be able to share just some insight in how much of it is along the process of it, or is more forethought or afterthought in terms of how you're looking at how a project applies or may not apply to certain things as well. Thank you.
That's a good question. Jennifer, do you want to take it? You want me to start?
Yeah, I can start it. I think that's is a complicated. Before everyone got on, we were talking about the design framework and the idea of choosing two to really emphasize in your presentation. And I think kind of historically, we've always thought of like the book that we create is kind of the first time we really re-see the project like you're describing, Kevin. So I think, a lot of like how we present the project to the client, we try to do drawings and capture things at particular phases, like conceptual things that we can use later in a presentation. But things like, elevations and sections and site plans, we always end up cleaning up and doing a lot too. The photography process to me is kind of the big lift in these, and deciding what you need to photograph, I think, is something that's kind of hidden in this. And like, for example, when we're doing presenting the project in a series of renderings, and like A25 Arts, we did a lot of renderings so that they could get bonding, that they could fundraise. So there were a lot of different kinds of representations, and we had a lot of back and forth with them through the design process about what those representations should feel like and show. And it became part of the design process. So when we got to photography, we really knew what kind of things we wanted to shoot from that, and then what things we always had felt were missing and that we never got to show through renderings.
One thing, Jennifer, that your submission did really well, and I think it's really smart, was like blended amateur, quote unquote, photography with professional shots in a way that they felt complementary and seamless. And I totally agree that the photography is a heavy lift. It's oftentimes really expensive and involves a lot of coordination. Sometimes you're trying to get partners to pay for it, and there are more stakeholders that want certain things photographed. And I really liked that strategy of just committing to like the shots that you took and pairing them with some of the more kind of composed professional shots. I thought that was smart and
cheap.
and cheaper. Yeah, but just like, economic, industrious. I think, Kevin, I kind of maybe reading into your question a little is like, to what degree does the framework for design excellence inform your decision making throughout the process versus something that you're kind of post-rationalizing at the end? When it first came out and you're trying to put together these award submissions, and I didn't even know what the framework was, and now I'm somehow making the argument that this project meets it all, that felt really strained. Oh yeah, we were really thinking about, of course you're thinking about the framework, but not in that kind of, not in that structured way. And so I think over time, as you start to work with it, with these award submissions, it does sort of work its way informally and sometimes formally into the design process. We'll use it, the framework specifically, as a tool to introduce ideas to the client. And so it's become more integral, I think, and it makes these submissions feel more natural than early on when you're kind of just trying to shove your project into the framework and make the argument that it fits.
Yeah. And
The other thing though, sorry, one other thing is the framework to me feels like it's set up that we need to make an argument. We're nailing all 10 of them, all 10 categories. And I really like the idea of just not worrying about some of them and really focusing on the ones that matter to your project. And again, it feels more genuine and focused to think and work that way, but it's sort of hard. Like when you're filling this Common App out, you're writing something about all the categories, and some of them are really genuine and integral to the project, and others feel like you're just answering the mail.
I totally agree with that. And I would add one more thing. We really struggled with the framework, and there were like, when it was first out, we were just kind of overwhelmed by it because we also don't have marketing in our office. It's like, it's us doing this. When it's due, it's like half of our office is working on it, and it takes up, if we're doing more than one submittal, it's like, this is what I get to do, and Vince gets to do like 3 weekends in a row. And so submitting is a big commitment of time and resources, and then photography is super expensive. So like, how do you use your resources? And the first time the framework came out, we just didn't know how to get at it. And I sat in on a couple of juries and I saw how other firms were using the framework, and I realized it was easier than we were making it. And that was a huge thing, which is like, oh, we actually already are doing that, but we're just not writing about it in a way that's obvious. And I think what you said, Chris, about they still start with the PDF and they go to the Common App afterwards. That was another eureka moment that's going to change how we do it differently next time, because that makes me think, well, it isn't just how we see what we did well in the framework, it's what they see by flipping through the PDF, because they may see something different than what we did. And with UCC, they focused on wellness, and it's a no energy building. It has no heating and no air conditioning, and it's used by day, it's all daylight. So the fact that they saw it as about wellness and not energy, we were just surprised by. So, you know, I think how you kind of have to touch on the design framework and the Common App just to kind of get by and explain each one. But I do think Nat's totally right that there's some things that you are really invested in the project and that you really think kind of sets it apart, that you're going to push through in a few of them.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that you do not need to address all 10. You do not need to show success in all 10. Very few projects are able to do that. If they are, they're probably being submitted for Code Top 10 awards nationally, and we'll have a very good chance to win. At least 2, because we want the jury to kind of hook on to at least 2 framework measures. But some of those measures are almost thematic more than metric. You know, integration, resource, change. There's some things that you're invested in, as Jennifer said, in the project that you didn't think of as design for resources, but you know, it's definitely there with that. You can argue that with integrity and authenticity. So, yeah, I would focus on the ones that, having watched these juries the last several years when we moved to the framework, as the framework, you know, at least 2, focus on the ones that you really think you have an argument to make. You don't have to do it with a lot of text. That summary diagram that Nat and his HGA team did for Mills Hall and the Gibbons Center was enormously helpful to the jury. And in fact, there hadn't been, I don't think, a lot of storytelling about energy, that project, but the energy performance is excellent, and it came through in that final summary. And then one of the measures it gets cited in is design for energy. So, yeah. Any other questions? I'm talking too much.
No, all of it is super helpful.
Oh, we got a thank you from one of our guests. Okay, well, this video will be up later, probably early part of next week if you want to rewatch it. It'll be on YouTube and available on the Honor Awards page here. Really want to thank Matt and Jennifer. Great presentations, great projects. Really great insights into your process for putting these together. Really helpful, Matt, to look at both the one that didn't get there 2023 to the award that did, with some insights on why you made the changes you did and simplified. So thank you both. Any questions anyone has can be directed to me, hudson@aia-mn.org. I've been involved in this for a long time. You can get your answers very quickly. Don't stress about the Common App or the framework. I'm happy to chat with you. We've got some folks from our code committee that are also can jump on have volunteered to jump on a call with anyone who has questions about the Common App. You'll see in the instructions on the portal that we're not asking for just complete filling out of the that common or the Common App. There's some instructions on what to fill out and how to do so. So be in touch, and thank you all for joining us, and be in touch with me if you have questions along the way. We hope to see a lot of submissions this year. Thanks again, Jennifer. Thank you again, Nat.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.